Starring, amongst others, Amanda Stenberg, Harris Dixon, Skylan Brooks, Mandy Moore and Gwendolyn Christie. Directed by Jennifer Hugh Nelson, off of a screenplay by Chad Hodge. This is my review for The Darkest Minds. The Darkest Minds is another YA adaptation of a book, and in this one, 90% of the world's children, stretching up to teenagers, I think, have all died. The other 10% have started to develop powers, sort of like mutant powers, kind of like the X-Men. But those 10% are now feared by the adult world, and they're all sent off to camps, basically, to camps to live out the remainder of their lives under constant security and constant scrutiny. Our lead character in this, a character named Ruby, is able to break out of the camp that she's in. They're all ranked by colour, by the way, so you've got green is the lowest, and then it goes up to orange being dangerous and red being the worst, and so on and so on. They're all colour graded. But Ruby escapes and she makes friends with another group of teenagers who are on the run, and they are trying to get to somewhere they believe to be a safe haven where they can live out the remainder of their days in relative peace. So given the subject matter, you would think that this was a dark and serious and brooding movie, and it should be. 90%. So that's 90% of the world's children have died. And then you have this other 10% who are shunned from society, who are forced to live a life that's pretty miserable and pretty bleak. The movie doesn't seem to grasp that. I'll say a couple of good things about this first, but they're not really anything that I can give the film itself credit for. The plot itself is interesting, but it's taken from a book, so I can't really credit the film for that, but it is an interesting premise. If it was done right. And there is one twist in this that I thought was also interesting, but just handled poorly. But they're really the only two things that I can say positive about The Darkest Minds. And they were just taken straight out of the book. I don't know how closely the film sticks to the book. I don't know whether the twist is still the same, but even though, as I say, it was a nice twist, but it was just done really, really badly. So much about The Darkest Minds doesn't work, and it's hard to know where to begin and where the problems lie. For me, one of the biggest ones is that it doesn't really understand its own story. It doesn't see how dark this is. We're supposed to believe that Ruby and Liam and these characters, these four main characters that we have and we follow their journey, that they're in a dangerous world, a world that's incredibly dangerous for them, and they're desperately trying to survive. They're desperately trying to evade capture. But the film doesn't focus on that. It doesn't give us the right material. Instead, we have jaunty little musical numbers playing over montages of them just, walking across the countryside or going into a shop and trying on clothes and trying on sunglasses and just generally having a nice time together. And that's not what this should have been, because, as I say, the actual situation they're really in is pretty horrible. And the situation that the world is in is pretty horrible as well. And that's another thing that's barely even touched on, is how the adults in society are dealing with this. As I say, it's pretty horrific. The whole situation is, but Darkest Minds doesn't stick to that. It doesn't have the correct tone that it should do. It's all too light and too breezy and too inconsequential in a way as well. The next problem with it lies with the script, which frankly is awful. These characters are so poorly developed that I don't care about any of them. And this includes the lead, Ruby. I think performance-wise, Amanda Stenberg, I think I said her name wrong. I think I said Amanda before. It's Amanda Stenberg. She does the best, I think, out of everybody, but I don't know whether the performances are bad because they're bad, or whether it's because they weren't given anything of substance to work with. The script is so paper thin. The characterization is so paper thin that, as I say, I just couldn't care less about anybody in this. Mandy Moore and Gwendolyn Christie are also credited as starring in this, and that's a bit of a joke. Mandy Moore, at least there's something to her character. At least I wouldn't say she's developed, but you understand sort of where she's coming from. Gwendolyn Christie plays Lady Jane in this one. She's sort of a bounty hunter that's going after all of the kids that have escaped. And if you thought Captain Phasma was a villain that needed some more development, my God. I don't even know why Christie took this role, because we've seen her in Game of Thrones. She's a great actress. She's given nothing to work with here. Absolutely nothing. Lady Jane is a complete blank slate who barely even shows up. She's meant to be this imposing villain that our characters are scared of. I don't really understand why, though, because we're not given any time with her or any kind of development, no backstory, no personality traits, no nothing. And the resolution to her character is just, I think they were going for sort of dark, but they didn't. It was quite funny. I guess there was a little bit of a dark aspect to it, but again, it's just the way it's handled. The film just seems so unable to go where it needs to go to do the really dark things. Instead, it kind of goes towards it a little bit and then just off we go with another musical number. And of course, we have a love story here because why not? I can tell you why not, because it doesn't fit. It doesn't. The romance between Ruby and Liam is awful because, again, why do we care about these two? What have we been given to care about them? There's no gradual build-up to these two falling for each other. They're just guided by plot and by the fact that the plot wants them to have a romance. It wants them to be these two people that we're supposed to root for. But I don't at all. There's no chemistry between the actors. There was no attempt to write chemistry between them into the script. It's just a completely, I'm using the word inconsequential again, but it is an inconsequential romance. And so much of The Darkest Minds doesn't make any sense either. As I say, they're graded by colours, so when they're taken as children, they're graded by colours on how dangerous they are. Green being not that dangerous, red being, oh my god, kill this person now. And our main character, Ruby, is an orange, so she's dangerous, but she's not the most dangerous, but still she's, in the eyes of the adults, in the eyes of the government, she's a threat. They're looking for this safe haven. This is the film that we have, is their journey to try and find this place they believe to be somewhere they can live peacefully. The leader of this camp is said to be an orange, the same as Ruby. But Ruby doesn't tell these kids that she's with that she's an orange herself. But the question is, why? Because Liam and everybody clearly don't have a problem with an orange, because they're literally, the plot of the movie is them seeking out a camp run by an orange. So why doesn't she just tell them she is one? And the answer for that is because they want a big reveal moment. They want a big, oh my god, they found out she's an orange. But why would they care? It's forced moments like this that really drag The Darkest Minds down. I mean, not that it was sort of up to begin with, but it just didn't need forced conflicts like this. It didn't need forced secrets just for the sake of having them. And the film is so boring as well, really boring. The use of the powers, it just seems that everybody has just exactly the power that they need to have to get them out of whatever situation they're in, which is a bit contrived, but it's the sort of thing you can forgive if everything else going on around it is okay, if it's enjoyable. It's not, so that stands out a little bit to me. And yeah, there's just nothing really to this. You follow them on this journey, and things kind of go in a more or less predictable manner. As I say, there is a twist towards the end that's perhaps naively, I didn't see coming, so that's one good thing going for it, but the way they handle it, as I mentioned, it's just poorly done, it's poorly executed, and the villain in this one is laughable. Like, we know, and I'm not talking about Lady Jane, although, to be fair, she is too, but the villain that we get to see, again, there's nothing really to say why this guy's doing the things that he's doing. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Darkest Minds also sets itself out for a sequel. It sets itself up, to have a sequel. The way this ends, you can tell that they're thinking of a trilogy of movies, because as far as I'm aware, there's 3 books, and they had very clear intentions on making sure that people came back for a second one, but it's not going to happen. We're not going to get a sequel to this one, because from what I've seen, the box office has been appalling, and the reviews haven't been all that great either, so we're not going to get a second one to this, and that's fine, because despite the fact that things are a bit open towards the end, it doesn't wrap things up. I have no desire to come back to this world. I have no desire to see these characters again. So it'll just be one of those films that's kind of left hanging a little bit. I'm going to give The Darkest Minds a 3 out of 10. It has some interesting moments in it. It does. There's certain moments towards the end that are actually a little bit exciting, but it just comes far too late in the game. There's a lot of movies coming out at the moment, and honestly, Darkest Minds is one I would not recommend seeing. There's plenty of other ones you can go and see instead. This doesn't really deserve anybody's time. Have you seen The Darkest Minds? If so, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And have you read the books? Are the books better than this? Do you happen to like the movie? I mean, let me know if you do, but how do the books compare? If you enjoyed this video, hit like, hit subscribe. There will be a review for The Meg coming soon. I'm expecting dumb fun. I hope it's dumb fun. You can follow me on Twitter @JoeJulians. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next video.